Good evening and welcome to the Summit on the MidwestSports.net YouTube channel. Thanks for watching tonight. And listen, we have an extremely top-notch panel on here tonight, and we want to talk about some GLVC basketball and maybe a little bit more. We'll see how it all works out. Directly to my right on the screen is Brad Boyer. He's the sports director for Alpha Media and actually does some play-by-play along the way. An award-winning broadcaster for a number of years of solid work both in college and high school. And he's the play-by-play man for the Truman Bulldogs, and he can be heard on KRES 104.7, and we'll just go clockwise. We get to see also Marianne Mitchell, who's the Associate Director of Athletics for Communications at Missouri St. Louis, now in her 14th year with that program. And, man, they've got a lot going on there as well. Also, we continue on around and we get Ed Beach, who is the Assistant Athletics Director for External Affairs and for Media Relations at Drury. Also this year getting to do play-by-play. Now, I know Ed's done a lot of broadcasting in the past as well, but double duty now. And, Ed, let's just go ahead and go to you first because we're talking Great Lakes Valley Conference basketball, and man, you have to start at the top. Drury, the number one team in the country again this year in women's basketball for the 11th or 12th week of the polls this year, and rightfully so, 23-0, returning the player of the year in Division II from last year. What's it been like to get to call the games for a team that's doing so well?
A great thrill, and first of all, thanks for being here as well. I mean, it's very nice to get the invitation extended to us, but a great thrill. And I think that this was maybe one of the most anticipated basketball seasons in the Ozarks, not just at Drury, but in terms of this area basketball, because it was a special team last year that went undefeated all the way to the national semifinals and returned all 5 starters and returned virtually the entire roster from last year, then added a couple of key pieces to the roster, most notably a former Lebanon player and one of the great players in the state when she was a high schooler, and transfer from Mizzou, Kelsey Winfrey, who comes off the bench and is a nice addition to the roster, as well as another state player from St. Joseph named Mia Henderson, another one of the best players in the state out of Fair Grove, Elena Finley. So you had that added to the mix with 11 returning players and on all 5 starters. And it was everybody knew that this year could be another special run with everybody returning. So the buildup was something, and to now be in the middle of it's been a great thrill.
Well, there's just a lot of quality basketball going on all the way around. And I think one of the person that warrants mention, we talked about the player of the year in Haley Disselkamp. She's just set another record as the only active player with 2,000 points now, 1,000 rebounds. And by the way, I mean, you talk about all those returning players coming into it, but to have that kind of production week in and week out, she's making some kind of noise to possibly get that honor again.
Yeah, it really is. And really what's remarkable about the 2,000, 1,000 thing is that really throughout her career, Drury's offense never exactly went directly through her all the time. She kind of gets her points and rebounds just kind of in the flow of the offense and what we do. I think you see a lot of players that get those type of numbers, and a lot of times they're a low post player or a center, and the ball goes through them almost every possession. And that's not really the case with Disselkamp. It kind of comes in the flow of the offense. And to be honest, her first 2 years, she probably wasn't the first option in the offense at all. We were kind of a perimeter-oriented or a guard-oriented scoring team, but she would still have several games where she'd be prolific in the scoring department. But it's been really just a remarkable season. It kind of comes out of a lot of what the offense does and a lot of what her defense is able to create and get points in transition and that type thing. But it's been a blast to watch her throughout her career, and hopefully she's a long way from being done in her senior year so far.
Well, it looks that way. I mean, it really looks that way. And this is a program too that finally got over that hump, getting out of the Midwest region, last year and making into the Elite Eight after so many times coming up just this close, and then going up against the eventual national champions in Lubbock Christian last year. Well, they're at the top of the men's standings in the GLVC. The team that was at the top of the men's standings, and Marianne, I have to use was there for just a little bit. I know alone at the top, but this is a team in UMSL that really has hit its stride on the men's side. Back-to-back seasons now with 20 victories on the year, and that's a first for the program. I know that last weekend, was not really what you wanted to see as a fan, and sure, working with the program as well. 2 losses, but 20-4 on the year is nothing to sneeze at, and still right up there at the top of the men's standings. Talk about this men's program this year.
Yeah, it's been pretty exciting. Like you said, we had 20 wins last year, and I think one of the keys is this year we've got a few players that they've been playing together for 3 years now, and they've added a few players in. Junior transfer, Yakima Rose came from a junior college, and he's done really well at the point guard position. But the thing when you look at our roster is our tallest player is 6'5", so we don't have a lot of height. We had a couple guys that got hurt in the preseason that are 6'8", so we're really short, and I don't think anybody really expected us to be where we're at this year. So they've really taken it on defensively, and like you said, we had a couple losses this past weekend, but hopefully they can regroup and get back on the right track.
I know one of those losses was it was a tight one, a 1-point loss against Truman State, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this is a part of the season that last year where things started to seem to unravel just a little bit. I mean, I know that you got up to 20-win plateau, and then right about this time last year there was a 4-game slide. Now I'm not going to speak a 4-game slide into existence for you now, even though they're 2 right now. But what's the difference between last year and this year, and how do they right the ship?
I think it's just down to experience. We've got some players that have been there last year, and they kind of know, they're not, they understand what kind of the end goal is. They're not just focused on, hey, we set another record. We're nationally ranked for the first time in how many years, and it's our highest national ranking. They kind of see beyond that and what is an end goal.
Well, that the loss on Saturday was a tough one, and watching that one from afar, I mean, it comes right down to the wire, a 72-71 loss to Truman State, and the gentleman that's above you on the monitor right now had an opportunity, I'm sure, to get to see that up close and personal as Truman comes away with a 72-71 victory over UMSL, a Turner Scott free throw at the very end. And Brad, I mean, you've got it going on both sides of the standings now. You have the women's team doing well, but this men's team is pretty solid.
It has been a special season. I'm sure Marianne was thrilled that I was invited on with her after. But I'll tell you what, that was as high a level of game as I've called in a long time, and I don't foresee a 4-game losing streak for the Tritons. I love their team. I love our team too, playing very well. If we don't have the player in the year, Broderick Thomas, I don't know who it is. He has been at another level. I think everybody knew the talent he was coming into his senior year, but this is his 4th week in a row. He's been the conference player of the week, and every week it just gets better. Flirted with a triple-double on Saturday. Jeff Horner's done a great job. The one thing you can say about these Truman teams is they both have overcome adversity. It's really amazing that they're 12-2. Pretty incredible story on both sides. We've got Ed on with us here today. One of the stories with the Drury team, obviously, is the head coach of the Truman women left for the Drury program right at the start of the school year. And so this women's team is led by Theo Dean, who has never been a head coach. And I would submit at this point of the season, he's probably the Great Lakes Valley Conference Coach of the Year. Just done an amazing job taking this program on the fly. And then you've got Jeff Horner in his 2nd season. And this is a young man who was diagnosed with testicular cancer in the off season. And so leading into this season, he is taking treatments. And I'm happy to say he's gotten a clean scan, at least before the season, but he missed the first few games because the treatments took that much out of him. And for this team to be where they are right now, I think it speaks very highly of the 2 head coaches.
Well, let's stay with the men for just a little bit longer, Brad, and ask you really quickly as the season is winding down, the conference tournament's right around the corner, and The point rating system is something that I look at from a distance, going, wow, that's interesting to follow. I don't know if I'm old school to say, give me the standings, or how old or young that makes me look. But even with that, the schedule doesn't seem to get much easier for you all on either side of the men's or the women's side, but especially, the women, you've got the trip to Drury coming up in about a week, but on the men's side too, next week's this coming week's a bit of a challenge with Bellarmine and Indianapolis.
Yeah, we knew this would be the toughest stretch. I'm still ranked, Bellarmine ranked, Indianapolis has been ranked, but this is a team that is battle tested. If you look at our first semester schedule, Coach Horner told me it was the best in the country. Now, I have no way of knowing if there's a rating system that actually ranks that, but this is a team who started at Findlay, got a win, and Findlay was ranked in some polls. They won over Missouri Southern, who was nationally ranked. They went to Northwest Missouri State, who's the number one team in the country. They played at Washburn. So they played at Grand Valley State, who's nationally ranked. They played at Davenport, who was picked number one in their division in the GLIAC. So they were battle tested in the non-conference. I think we're starting to see that pay off here in conference play. The one thing I would say, and Ed and Marianne maybe would agree with me, I don't know that I've seen the men's side be as wide open as it is this year. Part of that is Bellarmine has been beaten, and that's part when the heavyweight finally goes down, that's a part of it. But I don't know who's going to win this thing. I like our position, but you're looking at a road trip this week where we very easily could take a couple losses.
Well, let me ask then, Marianne, let's talk about that on the men's side as you all were at the top of the point system prior to this past weekend, still right up there in the number 2 spot. But yeah, I mean, I look at the schedule over here and what you guys have coming up prior to the conference tournament with 6 games remaining. There are a couple of teams down, near the bottom of the standings, with McKendree and William Jewell, but I really don't see them as being just easy stepping stones. I mean, this is the final 6 games for the Tritons. Really could say a lot for how they can make a postseason run and make something happen in conference tournament.
Yeah, it's like Brad said. I think the conference race is wide open on the men's side. Bellarmine seems to be losing a few more games than average, but you got Indianapolis, who they can win some games and then they lose some games, and Southern Indiana the same way. And McKendree, they've beaten 3 ranked teams this year, so you can't take them lightly at all. So it's kind of exciting just to have some fresh blood at the top of the league, I think, and not really knowing who's going to come out on top until it's over.
Let me ask you this too, then, because you've been around the league, and all of you all have been around this league for long enough to have seen quite a bit of history in this. A little bit different perspective now as the Tritons really are playing some solid basketball. How much fun is it to watch this now and see a league that is as wide open really as it is? I mean, I know preparation and all the work that goes into it, and I speak this to you and Ed both, and I said it before we came on the air tonight, how much respect I have for the folks who do sports information and whatever the title is, and all these titles have changed, so much. And again, I think that's really a testament also to what you all do is to get some of these promotions and the title changes there. But that aside, I mean, this has got to be some fun basketball to watch.
Oh, it is fun. And it's also fun when you can write about something that's exciting and go through your record book and see things that haven't been done in a lot of years, and just to watch some basketball teams make some history. So it is fun. And, every game had there for a while was a little bit different where, hey, we could reach this milestone here, or we could reach this milestone there. So every time you go out, it's a little bit something different of what you're going to look for.
Ed, it looks like that Disselkamp could reach milestones just about any time she steps out on the court, and really at this point will do that because every step is just another record that's broken right there. But it's not just her, and I know that you talk about the players in returning all of those starters was such a big deal and makes this a big year. And then you look at the conference standings. I mean, the statistic that stands out to me the most is you have the top 3 in steals in the conference on the women's side. I mean, what kind of an odd statistic is that? And all 3 of them right now each have 60 steals apiece. So it's not just they're 1, 3, and 1, 2, and 3. They're 1, 1, and 1 in that category. it says a lot about the defense that's being played there, and it's not just the offense, even though you got another 60-point blowout last weekend.
Yeah, and honestly, it even goes beyond those three players. Paige Robinson, who's really, if you look just on the surface or just watch a game, you think, well, that's the three-point shooter. That's her role on this team. We played Lewis, who's last week. That's one of the better teams in the GLVC. I think they were second in the point rating system and third best record in the league. She had a dozen more steals than anyone on their roster. So it even goes beyond just those top three in terms of who garners steals on this team. It's just a defensive style of play that the Lady Panthers employ that's kind of gotten them where they are. That's actually kind of the next record to watch. And ironically, the number 2 player in program history in steals is head coach Molly Miller. So kind of wanting to see if exactly how we get to announce that. If someone even passes her on the all-time steals chart, that will be some fun. And then as these players move out, I have a feeling she's not going to mind being passed by any of those three in terms of that career mark.
Now, you're probably going to have to Jim Nance that one, though, and prepare that in advance. Have that down. I think she'll be okay if you have something prepared.
Yeah. Have to give her a heads up. We've been charting it for a few months, so hopefully she kind of sees it. They're starting to kind of creep up. But she played on a team that was very similar. Kara Rutledge is actually the all-time leader in program history with steals, and those two were on the same team, and they stole a ton every game. They were both up there between 8 and 10 steals a lot of times in a single contest, and that's 1 and 2 all time, and it's still going to take some doing for Deja Bernard, or point guard, or Haley Disselkamp to surpass those two. But they're kind of getting in the neighborhood, so we'll see where it winds up. But we're going to have some fun with Coach Miller if they at least pass her anyway.
Let me ask you all this, and I know you've all seen enough basketball to go around, and probably have seen these programs move from NAIA and transition up to Division II. I know I've seen this with the programs with which I've worked, and some of those records, and Ed, you mentioned that, some of those records from the times in the NAIA, they're ridiculous to think that they're going to be beaten. And yet some of these players like a Disselkamp, or Bernard may get there. This question for any one of you all then, how big is it to see some of those 20 and 30-year-old records get close to or be surpassed?
Well, from my perspective, and I was a kid watching Drury, in the 70s, 1970s and 80s, and they had some great teams and great players. Drury won an NAIA national championship in 1979. So those names mean a lot to me to see there, and then players that I would have interacted with as a kid in basketball camp at the top of the record books. It definitely gives a perspective to me to see some players, surpass some of those, and kind of neat to be here in that regard to see that happen. And that was also, back in the NAIA, you played maybe 32, 33 or more games just in a regular season. So you had more opportunities. So it actually kind of puts in perspective being in NCAA Division II, where you're limited to 26 to 28 regular season games, harder to advance in the postseason. And it's a much more difficult level of play, but it's definitely, interesting, and definitely gives me a perspective when I see some names start to surpass some names from my childhood up through the charts.
I really thought you were going to say you were watching them play as a kid in the 1700s, and I thought you're not quite that old. So now I'm a 70s model myself from way back when, and getting to watch some of these players now. I mean, it really is something to see. And you're right, the names that are on these record books and have been there so long, they mean a lot to some of us who have watched, for so many years. So, well, anyway, I appreciate the panel tonight too. And then I want to wrap up our time. And guys, just around my household now, I have 5 kids, and around our house, we've had this mythical panel for a number of years that if a premise is thrown out there, we have to see if the panel accepts that premise as to whether or not we're going to go with what we're going to do for the day wherever we are. So I'd like to throw out 2 or 3 premises here and see if you all accept this premise and if it works for you or not. So this is for all of you, and I'll start with Ed. We'll work our way around here. Here's premise number one. Do you accept this? Drury will be undefeated heading into the NCAA tournament again this year, just like they were last year. Do you accept that premise?
Yes. Yep. Feel confident.
Marianne, the Drury women.
Yes. They will be.
All right. Now, Brad, you're going to get a chance to see them here in just 2 or 3 games. Do you accept that premise?
We still got to come. We're coming to Springfield. We're playing our old coach, so there'll be a little bit of fire. They're going to be hard to beat on their home floor. Here's the thing is, we can't get Drury to come to Kirksville. It's going to be like a third year we come to Drury. How this schedule's worked out, we go to Bellarmine 3 years in a row, but they'll be hard to beat, but we'll take our best shot.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say that the panel accepts that, even though it's a reticent acceptance from Brad.
I got outvoted.
All right, then we'll take the men's side too. We'll start with you, Brad. A team from the GLVC will be playing in the Elite Eight on the men's side of the bracket. Do you accept that premise?
I do accept that premise. I love the night in, night out battles that are making all of our teams better. We played a Lindenwood team that lost 9 in a row last Thursday, and they had us on the ropes at the end. I mean, that's the kind of challenge you face each and every night. I'm buying it.
All right. How about you, Marianne? Could be the Tritons too.
It could be. You never know. I would go with that. I think the conference as a whole is great, and there's 6 to 7 teams that could honestly be there. So it'll be fun to see. And
very likely at least 3, I would think, that could be playing in that Midwest portion of the bracket as well, too. I think that's legitimate. But, Ed, do you accept that premise?
I do, because on the surface, my initial reaction was, boy, I'm not sure I actually see that as the best of our league being better than the best teams in the GLIAC. I would not bet against a Great Lakes Valley Conference men's basketball team. Don't care what their record is. Don't care who represents us in the regional, because every year there's a little bit of a surprise from our league just on how deep someone goes. A Bellarmine team that might look vulnerable but then gets hot in the postseason. Last year's Southern Indiana's run, didn't see that coming. Definitely wasn't completely shocked that they went as far as they did. Just how that team is, and just on a given week in a regional tournament, or maybe 5 teams that could run through and surprise some people.
All right, we'll go ahead and we'll say the panel accepts that, and I think that's legitimate. So that's all right. All right, one more, guys. Then, and we'll throw this out there. Patrick Mahomes right now has probably as much capital as you can imagine just within the state. I would think even political capital is there. So Patrick Mahomes should just go ahead and cash in everything right now, bypass Governor Parson, and run in November himself, because he will be elected governor in Missouri. If he runs, Mahomes would go ahead and get the nod in November. Do you accept that, Ed?
I do, just to say a little bit of credibility on this. Governor Parsons has been to one of our games.
Okay.
We also have a player on our men's team, Asa Hutchinson IV, whose grandfather is the governor of Arkansas. And I think even Asa would admit that Mahomes could probably be elected tomorrow in Missouri and Arkansas. Give him both states.
Okay, Marianne?
Sure. I live in Illinois, so I couldn't vote for him anyway, but
You live on the other side of the river. I
do,
get it.
yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. How about you, Brad? Is that legitimate?
I believe Mahomes could be elected president of the United States.
Okay. Well, hey, listen. You just never know at this point. Anything I think is possible at this point. I want to say thanks, Brad, Marianne, Ed. Thank you so much for being with me on the summit tonight. And listen, 3 more weeks of GLVC basketball before the conference tournament rolls around, and I know it's going to be a good one again. So we'll be following you here on MidwestSports.net, and I definitely want to get a chance to visit with each of you all again. And who knows? I mean, we could very well be talking about teams from the conference in the Elite Eight. And I don't think that really would or should surprise anyone at all. It's just a matter of how far any one of the teams can make a run. And again, for you, Ed, specifically for a team that's lost one time in the last 2 years, it really looks like it's been a lot of fun. But thank you again for stopping by, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joey.
All right, this has been the Summit on MidwestSports.net. I invite you to share this video tonight. It's been on the YouTube channel. It's also on our Twitter account right now. Please do subscribe to this channel. We would appreciate that. It's growing, and we do want to get solid content from small college athletics as well as high school, and we just want to have fun doing it. So, again, thank you to my panel tonight, again, to Ed Beach and to Marianne Mitchell and to Brad Boyer. I'm just Joey. God bless you all. Have a great night.
Bye.